Svalbard is an archipelago in the North Atlantic. Until well into this century, it was a no-man's land. Today, it is under Norwegian jurisdiction, but there are traces of its former status everywhere. Russian inhabitants, for example, outnumber the Norwegians 2-1. Appropriately, Svalbard means cold coast. It is 650 miles from the North Pole and a somewhat shorter distance due north of the northernmost tip of Norway. Of the 9 islands, Spitsbergen is the largest, Bear Island perhaps the most legendary. Once one leaves the few small settlements huddled along the banks of the ice fjord, there are few signs of civilization. One is more likely to encounter a polar bear, reindeer, or Arctic fox than another human. Night falls on Svalbard in October and does not lift again until February. The thermometer hovers around 40 below. The snows come, driven by the Arctic gale. The ubiquitous glaciers thicken, and the Svalbardians grow resigned and glum. The only break in the darkness occurs when the northern lights cast their eerie glow across the barren terrain. Then the sun rises. At first it scarcely peaks above the surface of the sea, but it steadily gathers vigor until in April it no longer sets at all. For 4.5 months, the fabled midnight sun trudges out its great ellipse along the horizon, touching all points of the compass every 24 hours. Whether resting on its fiery perch in the north at midnight or hanging lackluster at its low apex in the south at noon, it is at work round the clock, illuminating the unearthly landscape of Svalbard. Jagged peaks and towering rock steeples, huge granite domes and desolate gravel flats, ice cliffs which rise in awesome blue and green formations from the fjords. In the protected valleys, the constant sunlight of summer pushes the mercury above the freezing point. The top few inches of earth, frozen to a depth of 1,000 feet, turn soft. In the shallow mud, a small miracle takes place. Shrub-like growths, the polar willow, the dwarf birch, appear on the treeless wastes, and colorful grasses create a patchwork of miniature meadows. The archipelago's flowering plants, the yellow ranunculus, the light blue mountain phlox, the white Svalbard poppy, the purple saxifrage, stage a brief celebration which brightens the ugly, menacing face of the land. Today, this bleak cluster of Arctic islands is a focal point of great power politics. More than the coal deposits, more than the reputed oil reserves under the coastal waters, or even the uranium known to lie beneath the permafrost, it is Svalbard's immensely strategic location that makes it so important. For nature has given the archipelago one gift among all her curses. The Gulf Stream passes so close that the waters to the west and south, though clogged with ice, remain navigable the winter long. A glance at the map will reveal the result, an ice-free passage between Svalbard and northern Norway which links the great Soviet naval installation on the Kola Peninsula to the open seas. Since this is the Soviets' only secure window to the Atlantic, it is not surprising that they have concentrated most of their nuclear navy in and around Murmansk. Nor is it surprising that they take more than a casual interest in the Svalbard Passage. Prologue. The lead climber slammed his axe into the glacier wall and lifted himself another few inches. A crystalline shower of tiny fragments exploded in the air and fell glittering into the sea. He felt a rush of exhilaration. They were ready. This would be the last practice climb. The real work could begin soon. He glanced up the vertical aquamarine face of the glacier, another couple of 100 feet to the top. He saw his route in the folds and creases of the ice as clearly as if it had been penciled in on a photograph. It was cold, well below freezing, but the sun had been out all afternoon and tiny rivulets of water were beginning to trickle down the cracks in the ice. It poured into the sleeves of his wind parka and soaked his wool sweater. His muscles tightened from the chill. Better get moving. The view held him a moment longer. 1,000 feet below, the blue-green sea stretched to the horizon, quiet, immense, dotted with gently bobbing floes. The low sun glowed across the water. Its rays glinted off the ice screws he had twisted into the wall, off the helmets and ice axes of the other climbers. He was about to move when he caught a glimpse of his own shadow. It sliced across the ice wall and disappeared into the grey crevasse that ran parallel to their ascent. A dark force, the kind he often experienced climbing, seemed to pull him along the line of his shadow toward the crevasse. With powerful blows of the ice axe and delicate steps of the spur-like crampons on his feet, he moved sideways and slightly downward toward the point where his elongated shadow melted into the bottomless void. "Heinz!" yelled the girl who hung from the wall below him. "Heinz, for God's sake, put in another screw!" "Losing your nerve," he shouted back. "Shut up and put in another screw if you want to traverse. Why take chances now?" He ignored her. His shadow drew him onward toward the darkness. "Heinz, put in a screw!" He reached for the pocket of his belt. Suddenly, a rivulet of freezing water gushed down on him. His hand cramped around the ice axe. Panic stabbed him. He saw the sea far, far below. He saw the yawning gray fissure. He looked up, a vertical mirror of ice and a vast empty sky. Pressing his chest against the wall, he tried to flex the fingers of his frozen hand. Nothing. A splash of water hit him in the mouth. He choked violently. The cough jolted him away from the wall, tearing his hand from the ice axe. As he tumbled backward, he felt the crampons twist his ankles and break free. She caught him at the end of his 60-foot cascade with a perfectly timed belay. Miraculously, the top ice screw withstood the force of his fall, leaving him helpless but alive as he swung back and forth across the sheer face of the glacier. She pulled out her transmitter and called the rescue helicopter. He hung below her now, his eyes to the sea, his back toward her, held only by the rope around his waist.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.